Welcome to the Au Jus. I'm your host, B-Flow. This show is being sponsored by our friends, Punky's Pizza and Pasta, located at 2600 South Wallace, my personal favorite eatery in the neighborhood. They have the best selections of pizzas and pastas, as well as sandwiches and salads of any spot in Bridgeport. Currently, they have a terrific Monday Nights Only special. One medium cheese pizza for $12.99. No promo codes, no minimums. Just place the order after 3 p.m. and get one medium cheese pizza for $12.99. Toppings can be added, but at their normal prices. Hit the website, punkyspizza.com, for all your carry-out or delivery needs, or to cater your next party. You can also go 312-842-2100. The Scarlotta family will take care of you. Punky's Pizza and Pasta. The 108ers and our good friends from SoxMachine are hosting a live show, our annual opening day eve show, Wednesday, March 26th at the Ramova Theater Loft, 3520 South Halsted in Bridgeport. Doors open at 6 p.m. with the panel starting promptly at 7:30. Tickets are on sale online right now. Go to 108.ing/EVE. That's 108.ing/EVE to buy tickets. Buy them now before they sell out. We'll see you on opening day eve. This show is also powered by you, the loyal 108 supporter. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Feel free to tickle the undercarriage in the process. Like, comment, turn on notifications, and most definitely super chat, because that's how we get paid. It's how we continue to make the content you know and love. Tonight's guest. He's the host of Lockdown White Sox podcast, which airs 5 days per week on the YouTube channel and all your podcast providers. He also writes for Southside Showdown, a fan-sided website, and he's reportedly in the best shape of his life this spring, training. Todd Welter, welcome to the Au Jus, my friend.
Where did you get that picture? I look so angry.
I don't know. I try to scrub various socials, and some people have more pictures. You don't take a lot of pictures yourself. Credit to you that you don't. And then some people, they have very professional pictures. Like I had Alyssa Bergamini on this show last year, and I was trying to find a picture where she was goofing off, and it took me a while to find one, like on Instagram or whatever. So credit to her for keeping. But you don't put a lot of pictures out there. This one, I just felt like you look a little tough. You know, I don't know. I liked it. I thought it was good.
Yeah, and I'm wearing the same shirt. I am wearing my 108 shirt.
Hell yeah!
Supporting the 108.
Cheers for that. Love it.
Yeah, but I think I was probably, after watching a White Sox game, I was probably mad because the White Sox made me mad pretty much 121 times.
At a minimum, yeah. I would say there probably some in-game anger at some of the ones they won as well, I would imagine, occasionally.
Yes. So. Taking this gig now means I have to actually almost watch all 9 innings. If I miss something, I could go back. But, yeah, like back in the day before this, I used to be like, man, if I can't say it, I'll just turn the channel because that's what I learned from my dad. Dad, turn it off.
Yeah, right.
Oh man, turn it off.
We're not watching this shit anymore. I'm glad to finally get you on here, Todd. I wanted to talk to you first before we get into the position battles, which I think are infinitely interesting. I think the storyline of the White Sox this year is far more interesting than it should be for a team coming off 41 wins. But before we get to any of that, I want to talk about doing Locked On Sox. To my knowledge, are you the 4th iteration of podcast hosts of that? It was, Herbie by himself, but then it was Herbie and Tanny. So I don't know if you count that at 1 or 2. You got Sean Anderson for a while. Then you have Nick Morawski. And then it's you. Is that correct?
To my knowledge, yeah, that would be correct. I am number 4. I am number 4, and I am who is this guy? I can read you some of my the first comments of when I first showed up. I'm the who's this loser they got out of nowhere, that type of stuff, because heaven forbid I wasn't on 670 to the score because
most people aren't.
Yeah, most people aren't. And yeah, I'm number 4 after Nick. And I talked to Nick too. Like he just had some things come up in his life where he just could not do it 5 days a week.
Yeah, it's a brutal schedule. And I was going to ask you, how did you end up getting the job, Todd? How did you end up? As I know of you in the White Sox lexicon, but I know of a lot of people in that in the White Sox Twitter group. And so, how did you end up with the job? And what made you say yes to 5 days a week podcasting?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was on LinkedIn actually. People still sometimes I guess use LinkedIn every now and again. Like I probably check it like once a month. And I checked it and I saw their director of talent development saying, hey, we need podcast hosts. And I was literally at the beginning of podcasting. Like, I'm going to pull Les Grobstein and say I was there because I was literally at the beginning of when iPods came out. And I was working at 620 WTMJ up in Milwaukee. And they had just started launching their podcast and that type of stuff. So I saw that. And, I left the media world in 2010 because I was working for Satan himself. My boss Like if you want to talk about like politics and people that are just terrible human beings in radio and media, if you hear about those types of things, I had that. Like I literally had a guy that I worked for, not the host, this is my boss. So I left, joined the corporate world, all that stuff to make money, because that's the other thing. Like media world does not actually pay a ton of money for it. You got to do all that. So anyways, got out, and then the pandemic hits, and it's like, hey, I still like writing. So I started writing again, and I wrote for an MU blog that got me into writing at some fan-sided sites. And then I saw the thing on LinkedIn, and I'm like, hey, you know what? I'll give it a shot. I'll just message the guy. And the guy saw, the talent director saw my resume. We had a call, and he's like, hey, why don't you do a demo? So I did do a demo, and it was the worst demo you'll ever see. It's on YouTube.
We gotta look it up now. Now you said it's terrible, and and it's still out there. I love it. I'm gonna look this up.
It's under my name. You'll see that. It's terrible, and also the technical aspects, because like again, when I started podcasting, and I did it for about 4 years, it's only audio, so I wasn't used to reflect your camera. Like I didn't know that option. Like I even had to find this thing. And the funny thing is, I reached out to Aldo, of Bar Room, and God bless him, he's like, this is terrible. But I did a couple more. I did a couple more to show, like, hey, I'm eager. I still want to do it. They ended up actually giving it to somebody else.
Okay.
Something fell through who they went with, and they circled back. Like all of a sudden, out of the blue, I get a text message like, hey, you still want to do this? And I was like, sure, why not? Because Disney World is expensive. And that's why I do. It's a side hustle.
Side hustle, yeah.
The God bless. That's how I was able to afford to take my daughter to Disney World, and how I'm going to take her again this year, because that's all she wants to go to. So
now, Locked On is one of the shows that you got to work clean on there. I know I haven't been a guest on there a couple times with you, Todd. You got to work clean. Although I must apologize. We've done videos, and I have this sticker in the background that says I'm fucking Ben Affleck, and I forgot to cover it up, because I have covered it up in the past when I've done where you got to work clean videos, and I was like, I saw it. I was rewatching the one we did. Oh fuck! I left that in there. Hopefully no one noticed it. So. If you didn't get struck, so we should be in good shape there. So you when you get back into this, Todd, and you're doing live, not live stream, but you're doing video and stuff. What kind of changes you made? You had to get a ring light in your life, and you had to get like what did you realize you needed to do now that you were doing video all of a sudden instead of just podcasts?
So I had to get the nice camera and the nice microphone, and then really what it was is I had to realize I had to get a man cave. Like a place to record. I didn't really have it. That's the other thing. Like if you look at it, like I'm doing it in my dining room, and I'm like, here's my Casablanca plate because my life loves it, and there really was no. So I kind of had to start. And if you go and like you watch the evolution of the show, like I had to kind of set up my studio. Like for example, behind me for a while there was a elephant puzzle that my daughter did, but it was like, I did have somebody's like, what is this elephant doing? Let's see if I can actually.
You would see it. Yes.
There it is.
Yes.
Still there.
Looks good. Nice job.
There was a negotiation with my 7-year-old about where I can move it to in there. But yeah, when somebody was like, what are those two elephants doing? I'm like, come on, it's a baby elephant. And then I realized, like, you know what? I kind of have to design the studio. So designed it a little bit, the microphone. And really just what I had to do was I had to find my voice and find what am I bringing to the table to an already crowded podcast area, because as you said, like I think there's a podcast for 1.3 White Sox fans out there. I mean, and they all do great jobs. I mean, everybody does a great job in that, and I really do mean that. I would like to come across as a nice guy.
Not sure I believe you, and I don't personally believe that everyone does a nice job, but a lot of people do. There are a lot of good podcasts out there, and there's a podcast for basically everyone when you look at it, Todd. Now. But you're doing a podcast 5 days a week. And so my question for you is someone who's been creating content for a long time now. We've had the 108 blog for 8 years. We've been doing the 108 podcast for 6 years. How do you come up with the ideas? If you have to get on the mic every goddamn day, and especially in the off season, you can't fall over onto, I'll just recap last night's game. Boom, we'll get that out of the way and it's done. Right now, you're gonna have to generate ideas. Like how do you do it? Are you gotta meditate? You're gonna you got to take cold baths. How are you getting all these ideas coming?
Prayer, the power of prayer.
I believe it. God, please give me a fucking idea about these White Sox.
No, actually, and we were talking about this off before we started the show. Was so I do write for Fansided, Southside Showdown, which just a plug. I need contributors, so if anybody wants to be a contributor, it does pay. Mostly a tank of gas, bar tab for the month. But hey, there's a way to make some money. And the way I tell anybody, like some of these youngins, you can start doing media right now. Like I'm sorry if I'm parroting Bernstein, but he is right. Like if you want to do media right now, just do it. As you said, get a camera, get a podcast, get that. But
set up a YouTube channel, and that's it.
Yeah,
and throw a WordPress up there and start writing some shit. And put it out there on Twitter or wherever you can't really put links on Instagram. But what I've been doing on Instagram lately is clipping a screenshot of a portion of my article and saying this is the next thing that I wrote at fromthe108.com. Go check it out. And so there's a lot of ways to get it out there.
Yeah, and Fansided again, it's a somewhat legit site. I mean, they got Robert Murray as an insider. Like they do have some
Robert
legit.
Murray's the best.
Yeah, they do have some legit journalists there. I mean, but it is more supposed to be fan focused. But you can get tons of reps. So one of the things that I get my content ideas is we have a Slack chat in the Fansided chat, and they're always throwing out ideas like every day because their expectation is that you don't stop either. You go every single day at least is what they want. So now I don't totally follow that, and thank God I'm not covering a team that's terrible. Like if I was like my guy Jordan Campbell who runs Cubby's Crib, he's got to have stuff up like every single day and every 3-4 hours, and it's crazy. But so I get that. My actual boss, he's the host of Locked On Reds, Jeff Carr. He's awesome, great dude. He'll spitball stuff with you. And then the other thing is I'm constantly on Twitter to the point where my wife thinks I have an obsession, but it's like I need content creation. Like, right. So I've created
what's hot? What are people talking about? Who's running polls for shit? What's creating a great thread on Twitter? That you can give an opinion on? Like that's absolutely.
Bleacher Reports. I'll look at your guys' from the 108. SoxMachine I look at. Sox on 35th I visit every day. And I visit Southside Sox. So I basically visit all the Sox content and I look at that. And at the end of the day, and yes, I will say I finally have actually got to the point where in the grinder where, yes, I've had to Google White Sox. And it's like, oh, like the Luis Robert Jr., like, hey, there's I did see a couple of a Fansided article. There was, I think, Newsweek. How they're starting to now do more aggregation, responsible aggregation too. Like, if you're aggregating, are you doing it responsibly? Right. That type of stuff about like Luis Robert Jr. to the Blue Jays, and I'm like, oh, that might be a good topic because the other thing that I've found, and I think you might see it differently, I don't know, is a lot of the White Sox fans do like more about the big picture than they do about the mundane. Like, I remember some of my audience's numbers, like if you look at the YouTube, on the 41 wins they had, those were actually some of the lowest numbers I ever did. But of all the losses, like, and especially if I tied it to the big picture, then yes, I'd be getting a lot of viewers. And then some of the bigger viewers, like, you get in on that. So, it's just tying things on, learning the SEO strategies that I've learned from Fansided and Locked On, because you get great support from both those areas.
I would imagine, and we mentioned that you were technically the fourth in the line of Locked On White Sox hosts. Have you taken anything from the previous hosts to kind of add to what you're doing here? And you're taking a lot of your own things, but any things that you learned from the previous hosts doing it and have incorporated in the current version of Locked On Sox?
So Nick was awesome to me in the beginning. He gave me a lot of tips, like, hey man, try to script out or at least give as many of your notes as you can. And I know, like, if you look at the early comments, people are like, I was trying to figure out where do I place it to, like, but yes, there was times where I'd be like looking off, but it's like, yes, you want to have your notes, like you do, because you are filling up so much content and you want to be as accurate as possible. Right. Because if you mention one thing out, like, the Miguel Vargas bros, who we'll probably talk about in a little bit, they're a crazy bunch. I love them, but it's like, and we're fellow Sox fans, but I don't get it. Or the Vaughn backers too are like, how can you be out on them? Well, I gotta cite like 17 stats to support them, and you indoctrinated me into getting out of Andrew Vaughn. Because remember, I was a Vaughn truther.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah. It's gonna be an all-star.
So you write, you write kind of out what you want to do, what you want to say. I got that from Nick. Herb has been nothing but supportive, giving me a lot of confidence. When I felt at my lowest, I'll talk to Herb and he'll be like, dude, you're doing a great job. And Sean's just been great to be available. Tanny, I swear Tanny is the hardest working man in Chicago sports. Because I did reach out to him once through the Locked On. He said he would like to get on and then ghosted me, but he did it on, he realized, oh my God, I had never gotten back to you. But, I think he's doing a lot of the behind the scenes imaging for 670 where it's like almost and I've done that type of work too, where it's like you are constantly busy, where like, even if you want to give somebody 10 minutes of your time, you probably want to give 10 minutes of your time to your family. So,
right.
Tanny's so busy, and again, I don't think he's ducking me because I've had Shane on the show, so like there's availability and stuff. But I do think Tanny does a lot of like their promos and imaging. I'm just guessing because of his title that he has I remember he's like not only is the sound guy for the afternoon show, but I think he's like the head of like their sound and promotions or something.
Yeah, he's like senior audio czar or something.
Yeah,
like he has a big audio title. I know that. I congratulated him when he actually got that.
So it's just so I've kind of been like, what, I'm just gonna give up on trying to get Tanny on the show just because he's got to be super busy, and he's also probably like, I don't want to talk about this team anymore.
There is levels of that these days of trying to get people to come on and talk about that. I'm checked out on that team. I don't want to hear anything about it. But you and I, fortunately, Todd, are not checked out on this team. We're going to talk right now about some of these position battles, and I'm very interested. And we're just scratching the surface because today was the first full team workout, and I saw some clips of Will Venable, and he said the normal things: good to have everyone together, looks athletic, everyone's in shape, blah blah blah, whatever. But the first thing that's intriguing me very much, and the White Sox did this very recently, is they signed Michael A. Taylor. Now, in your mind, what does this mean for Luis Robert? The fact that they went out and signed a guy who is an obvious center fielder, doesn't have a lot of offensive profile, but the defense has still been good even through his age 33 season. He's entering his age 34 season. What are you seeing here?
All right, so I actually talked about this on today's episode. I'm convinced there's 4 things going on with Luis Robert Jr. Okay. And again, this is just more of my jump to conclusions, not on the insider, except for Ryan McGuffey and thought I was like dissing him on something. And he did say, well, when was Makata having value? I'll get to that in a second. But number one, I do think the front office doesn't trust Luis Robert Jr. to stay healthy, and that's why they still want to trade him before opening day. Because you still every now and again, like last week, Jeff Passan, he was on the ESPN Insider saying, hey, the White Sox are still open in and, trading Luis Robert Jr. Hey, look at us. So that's number one. I think they want to get rid of him. So you would have Michael A. Taylor as cover.
Yep.
Number two, I think Chris Getz does not understand Luis Robert Jr.'s trade market, though. So that's why you kind of do have Michael A. Taylor there to at least give him some time off, because Getz did say on 670 Score, I know he did a show about it, he did, talking about like they kind of want to limit what he's doing in center field. They want to keep his legs fresh because, number three, roll the dice and keep him and reclaim his trade value, and then get your three, because again, if you're asking the Cincinnati Reds for Rhett Lauder, Chase Burns, and Edwin Arroyo, no wonder why they were insulted, because that's one
organization. That season he's coming off of last year. Come on, now.
And that's one organization that I do think actually reflects its fan base and acting like its prospects are sacred cows, because they really don't ever make these big trades because they're the ones that are usually trading guys away. They don't understand that this is how it works. And I just forgot the fourth thing off the top of my head. It's on today's episode when it comes to the 4 things that are true about Luis Robert Jr. But that. So I think what Michael A. Taylor does give you is he at least gives you the defensive impact if you do trade Luis Robert Jr. before opening day that you would get with LRJ, because he does. He's going to catch everything. Right. Like, that's a nice thing. Number two, if you can't get your unrealistic price, which you're not, unless it's just somebody super, super desperate with injuries, you at least then you can move Luis Robert Jr. to, say, right, and then now you at least have some professional guys like Austin Slater and Mike Tauchman. You can move them to left late in the innings, and that way you can get Andrew Benintendi's god-awful arm off of the field, because I think you were there for a couple. I swear, all the losses just blend together, but weren't there a couple losses that they had at least, or leads blown late, because he was trying to throw a guy out at home, and he was lofting the ball?
Yeah, absolutely. And even fly balls to left field, teams aren't scared to tag up from second and get to third right in front of him. Like, there's no impact there. And even when he first got here, you knew he had the bad arm. But I remember we sit in 108. We have perfect view of watching the guys play outfield. And we were just in awe of how bad he is at getting jumps, poor angles that he takes. And we went to a game on the road in Cincinnati, and we thought, okay, well, our seats are in left field. We'll get a real good view on it. Maybe we've been drunk. We haven't really paid attention. And when we were on top of him, it was even worse, Todd. So the defense is just so bad and has regressed so bad with Benintendi. I hear you on getting him out of the outfield. Now, do you really think? Now, let me ask you this though about the specific situation, because I was going to talk about the mixture of how you would use the guys, but specifically you mentioned, put Michael A. Taylor in center and move Luis to right. Do you think there's any issues kind of politically with moving Luis to right field at any point in time? He thinks he's a center fielder. He probably thinks he's the best center fielder around. Do you think there's any issues with that? Or would the moving Luis Robert around anywhere, DH, or have to coincide with some sort of injury or some sort of him being a little nicked up to want to do it?
I think Chris Getz is going to have a sit down, because I agree on that you have to lessen his workload on his legs. And I'm not talking about like Michael A. Taylor starting center field every day and it's Luis in right. I'm talking about like late innings and you're just moving Luis to right. Or again, and they did talk like you're talking about maybe the day-night flip on there where he's played center at a night game, so now you DH him and you got Michael A. Taylor in center to at least catch everything and bat ninth, and maybe you hope to God that he gets a hit to give you something, because he can at least run on the base pass. He's just never on the base pass.
So he's got a little power. He might run into one, but there's a lot of strikeouts. So a lot
of strikeouts. But again, he'll catch everything. That's where it's at least he'll catch everything. And for a guy that watched how many times, I think, and you might remember, it was the Marlins game. I think that Marlins series where Kopech blew a couple saves where it was on some seeing eye singles where it's like, I think Luis Robert Jr. was not healthy yet, but if they had somebody who could have range, would have caught these balls like that. So I think you have to have an open and honest conversation with Luis Robert Jr. and just say, look, man, we're not doing this because you're not the center fielder. We're doing this because we're trying to preserve you, because yes, we are going to try to get you up out of here, even though he said he would love to be here for the rest of his career.
I heard that,
yeah, even though he sat down with his agent, Scott Boras. And I think Scott Boras right now, Scott Boras has actually been one of the best friends to the White Sox, even though he usually gets rid of his guys up out of the South Side.
Yeah.
Notice Michael Kopech became a much better pitcher once he moved to Scott Boras as his agent. I swear to God, I have this theory that he had the come to Jesus meeting with Michael Kopech and said, if you want to keep pitching in the big leagues, listen to your damn pitch plan. They actually know what they're doing when it comes to pitching. And guess what? He did. And guess what? A couple days later, he's up out of Dodgers winning a World fucking Series. There, I finally swore. I finally swore on a podcast. Anyways.
Bring it. Feels so good, Todd.
Yeah, so I don't know if there's going to be politics. I think if you just have an honest conversation and say, look, if you're going to right sometimes late in the game, it's not because we don't trust you. It's just we don't want every single ball hit your way where you have to run. Although knowing him, he'll still run, because how many times does he have to cover for Eloy Jimenez out in the outfield?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's why, remember, like, at one point, I think they really thought that he could just play all three outfield positions.
They would have it lined up that way. We mentioned Benintendi's issues, and then a lot of times in right field, especially when Dominic Fletcher was down for half the year, you'd have Gavin Sheets in right field. Or Tommy Pham still has a little bit of range, but not a lot. So it'd be Luis playing gap-to-gap center field, which is brutal.
And he is so muscular, no wonder why he's going to pull something. I mean,
exactly right. Yeah.
Although, hey, some guys we've seen, guys are pulling fat too. So I don't know how that's happening. I mean, if Luka Doncic can still have calf strains, then that whole you can't pull fat is false.
Boy's thick, absolutely.
I am sore right now after pushing a snowblower for the last week. Gosh darn it.
Well, speaking of additional battles, to me, the third base battle was going to be one of the most interesting ones. And then Brian Ramos shows up with to spring training with a balky elbow. My question is, does Miguel Vargas have plot armor on the 2025 White Sox somehow? Or is there still some sort of battle left here where he does not end up being your opening day third baseman?
So I thought about this question because I was like, I know he's going to ask me about it because he gave me a rundown before. Inside note, sorry. And I thought, actually I think it's going to come down to what happens at second base, because when you look at Josh Rojas's defensive metrics, he's a much better defensive third baseman. You just look at his defensive run saves and his outs above average, which I keep, I keep it simple in my opinion. Those are the ones that I always look at. He's a much better third baseman, but if you still don't have Chase Mydroff maybe ready, or the fact that you don't want to create a spot on the 40-man roster to bring him up, maybe you have to put Josh Rojas there. So to me, the standard would be is Brooks Baldwin and Chase Maedroth have to be very, very impressive in camp to push Josh Rojas off of second base and into third base. And Miguel Vargas on the flip side still has to look like he's traumatized because good Lord, man, that guy was shell shocked. I mean, I think that was a big part of the issue. Like, how many times did you see him like being like, "Oh, what the heck is going on here, man?" What? And you wanted to be like, "You're finally getting your shot in the big leagues, okay? You're actually on an." And that's the other thing. I hope he has bulked up, and I saw Ian Eskridge on the chat there. Yes, he's added 20 pounds. But really, he's just got to understand that he's actually in an organization that will give him a full season to actually do something. This isn't the Dodgers where you screw up, they don't have the time to deal with him. And although he got a runway, I talked about it on today's show. He did get a runway to the Vargas Bros. I'm tired of hearing that. Well, he didn't get much of a runway. He got 434 at bats. He got 81 games to prove that he was a starting second baseman on a contender. That's still you could say, well, it's half a season. It's still a half a season to make a case. I've seen guys make a case in half a season, and he didn't.
Yeah,
sorry.
That's true. And even after he came here and it wasn't a lot of plate appearances, he was, like you mentioned, he was deflated. He was awful. He lost a bunch of weight. Allegedly, he put the 20 pounds back on. He's eating rice and beans. I don't know if it's good weight or bad weight. I personally don't care as long as he can put some thunder through that ball, Todd, because you mentioned if he comes through and he's bad, like how bad do you think he'd have to be for the White Sox to pretty much just say, look, the trade didn't work, and we're cutting you before the season started? Because I was at a bar on Saturday, and someone's like, they're going to end up cutting him before the season starts. And this is just bar talk, obviously. Yeah. I thought that's far-fetched, but maybe not.
I think he would have to be the same guy that you saw on the south side in the dry Arizona air. Like, if he's hitting out 100 like he did in the second half, I think you definitely have to move on. But if he's hitting, even 200, and as long as, Maedroth and Baldwin show that they may need a little bit more time, or actually the other guy, if Sosa is still showing that, because I think you've got to give Lenyn Sosa the benefit, a little bit more of a kick in the tires to see if that strong September is something. I think he did do well enough, even though he's playing against the Angels half the time, and they clearly did not want to be
care.
There. Yeah, they did not care whatsoever.
They had phoned it in. I would listen to that, but I've been fighting against Lenyn Sosa for several years now, and Sosa seems to be the opposite of what Getz is trying to fill the organization with, and that's people that make good swing decisions. Sosa swings at everything, never walks. But I agree with you. If he comes into spring training and hits 6 home runs, I think he's on the team. Like there's enough missing power that maybe Lenyn Sosa can carve himself out of spot. And he looks best on defense at third, so that makes it a little more interesting.
Yeah.
You mentioned the second base battle. The middle infield is an absolute jumbled mess. There's a lot of people available for the particular spots. I'm a little more interested in shortstop. It feels like the White Sox want Colson Montgomery to be the shortstop, right? They would like him to start there.
It's rigged.
I was gonna say, so if they end up giving him the job, who's going to be filling out the bench spots? Because you're going to need another shortstop behind him somewhere in there. Like who's the ones who are going to be behind a Colson Montgomery? Should they just give him the job?
Well, that's a great question, and it honestly, I think they are going to try to give guys more of a shot. So you're not going to like the options. It's probably going to be Rojas, who hasn't played shortstop in ever, 2 or 3 years. Lenyn Sosa is the worst defender I've ever seen in my life. Not in my life, but he's terrible. But you would think that, or Brandon Drury, because that makes the most sense because they need power. That's why be rooting for Brooks Baldwin and Chase Maedroth to outperform these guys because especially Sosa, because I'm like you. The only reason why I think it's fair is just to see he did have. I mean, that was a strong September. It can't hurt to see it. He's out of options, but at the same point, like you said, he's freaking Godfather 3, as I keep saying. Like I want to be done with him. I want to be free of this man. But
just when you thought you were out, they pulled you back in. Todd, you're there.
That is Lenyn Sosa. I want to be free of him. I wish I could quit him. In the non-sexual way, that type of thing. Like, Brokeback Mountain. We don't want to go there, that.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
There is nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But you want to be done with him. But then he goes on like a September tear, or like he'll have that 3-for-4 game where you're like, oh my gosh, he could be a super sub. So I would rather have though Brooks Baldwin, obviously, because I think he at least provides a decent bridge. But as I keep saying, it's rigged, because when you look at the cover that they've given themselves at all these positions for these young prospects, you look at catcher, and I know we'll get to that in a second, but they've got at least some guy. They got two guys that you could say, you know what, they're going to play the game. They're going to play it professionally. They're not going to be like, oh my God, what are these guys doing? And they're not automatic outs. Third base, again, you got Rojas, for example. If Vargas fails, you could put him there. The outfield,
still got Ramos as well.
Yeah, Ramos, and you still got the outfield, where obviously they don't have anybody right now. The future besides Brady Montgomery's not going to be here for a few years, but at least they've got professional baseball players in there. Shortstop, you got Jacob freaking Amaya and Tristan Gray.
My guy.
What are we doing here? I mean, honestly, what are we doing here? So that to me, and it's like, why are you doing this to Colson Montgomery? Why are we going to go Gordon Beckham style here? I get he had a strong September, and I honestly, and I think I had you on my show previously, I'm tired of the rankings about him. I want to know what he does in the majors. Obviously, that's what I care about.
Right.
But I'm not. I agree with everybody that maybe let's see what he can do in April and May, and then bring him up in June to make sure that the September wasn't just like Lenyn Sosa. Hey, just had a good month. And Arizona, hey, he hit well in the dry air, and he made some swing changes. Yeah, well, let's make sure that these swing changes work where it's not going to actually cost you wins and losses, and it's not going to cost you a potential career, because like I keep saying, his floor is Paul DeYoung. I do think he'll have a big league career. I do think he will. His floor is Paul DeYoung, an average replacement level guy who can hit for power. Obviously he'll be on the left side. But I want his ceiling. I do. I still want his dang Corey Seager. Or what was your guys' ceiling? What did you have for him again? I read the article and I just forgot the guys.
I had Johnny Peralta if he stayed at short, and if he moves off short, I had Eugenio Suarez as ceilings for Colson Montgomery. That's much lower than Corey Seager, but I think those are really good. Those are good MLB players.
Well, when he was drafted at the time, I remember hearing about too. He's the next Corey Seager. So yeah, but even if he's a good big league baseball player, that's what I want. I don't want him being the next CHSN talking head in 5-6 years talking about how he hit 214. And that. And
now, Todd, you mentioned something that a lot of people have been bringing up. They've been saying, look, I'm not sold on the end of the season. I'm not sold on the AFL stats. Everyone fucking rakes in Arizona Fall League. I want him to go back down in the minors and spend a little more time. And so my question to that, everyone who said that, but you're going to be the one forced to answer it on my show. What if 2 months in Charlotte, April and May, and it's a 230, 295, 375 slash line? What then? What happens if he's just as mediocre, just as bad as he was the prior year for those 2 months that we want to incubate him in Charlotte? What do you do then? Do you just throw him up there anyway, or what? And this is where it kind of like I agree in that I don't think he's fully baked, but also what the fuck happens if you get the worst result by sending them back down?
So actually, I think see on one end I'm kind of actually in the middle. Let me put me in the middle here in the context, because I've even argued for this competition, specifically to this competition, I do want Colson Montgomery to win it because he's the only one with upside. I mean, I'm sorry.
That's true. We know Jacob Amaya can field the ball, but he's a horrible hitter. He's never going to hit in the major leagues. Brooks Baldwin, I mean, it's limited. If he turned into Brent Lillibridge or something like that, you'd be like, fuck, this is really nice. A guy who can play around, got a little bit of pop, that sort of thing. But it does no realistic upside. I agree 100% with you.
Yeah, so that's where I am. So I agree when you bring in that. And like, for example, I saw, and I know people hate it when I mention the Brewers on my show, but guys, I covered that team. I covered that team when it was at rock freaking bottom. I saw them give J.J. Hardy the shot, and I saw him hit 184 through the first 3 months. And obviously he went on to an all-star career. It took some time. So I see all the options that you have. So I agree with it. But on the flip side, what if he only hits, 0.98 and now you're screwed? And now you have that. So my official answer to what do you do if he has a 232 average is it's called you draft up the middle from here on out and move on to the next guy. Because Jacob Gonzalez, to me, is going to be he's given off Danny Mendick vibes too. Like I think that like that. And Brooks Baldwin, you're right. Like his ceiling, I think, is Brent Lillibridge, unless he's
Good
somehow
utility guy.
Unless he can start figuring out how to consistently rip the ball to right. He had that one game where he was 3 for 4 hitting a couple of doubles.
Yep.
And that type of stuff. But then again, all you'll just have to do is just be like, hey, defense, stand there. And they'll catch everything.
Absolutely. Okay, so your take then is if Colson doesn't win the job, you want Brooks Baldwin to win the job.
Yeah.
I personally, because he helped me win a steak dinner, I would not mind if Jacob Amaya won the job, but I have a feeling he has no shot at winning the job. But those are the only 3 real shortstops you got on the 40-man right now. And I don't even know if they trust Brooks Baldwin that much, because when they had chances to play him at short, they kept playing Amaya, and they weren't playing him. So it'd be interesting to see how that part shakes out. I want to have you make a decision. Pick it out of the hat. Who's your second baseman?
Right now, I got Josh Rojas. Although, again, I got a bet with Bez. I want Chase Mydroth and the Greek god of walks. It's just that the more I think about it, I don't know if they want to create a spot on. They have to get somebody off the 40-man roster.
Right.
And right now, I think they've DFA'd. They DFA'd Jacob Amaya so many times. I don't know how much more. They're not DFAing Oscar Colas, which I don't get. Free freaking Oscar Colas. Free the man. Why are you keeping him here? What is the?
They said they're going to teach him first base, and then 2 days later they brought in Joey Gallo. NRI.
Yeah,
it's like, sorry, Oscar.
Like, he's 27 years old. Free the man. But obviously, my heart says Chase Mydroth, but I think it's going to be Josh Rojas, because again, they are going to give freaking Miguel Vargas one more shot, which I'm willing to give him one more shot, Vargas Bros. I am. Just 1 month. He gets 1 month for me.
White Sox fans hate him, but the projection modules all kind of have him as basically a league average hitter, which would be a huge upgrade.
After watching him hit 100, and now he's projected to be a 1.4 F4 player. And I'm like, I'll freaking take that.
We'll take it.
And put him at first base. Because, he's projected to have a better F4 than Andrew Vaughn, and he's 3 inches taller than Andrew Vaughn. Put him at first base.
Yeah, it's probably not far from that, or just being a full-time DH. I want to get to the catcher position before we get out of here. It's interesting because you obviously have the 2 young studs that are both basically projected to be in AAA. Neither one of them are on the 40-man roster yet. Edgar Caro, Kyle Teal, and you have basically 3 placeholders in the way for 2 spots. You've got Corey Lee, Matt Tice, and then you got old friend Omar Narvaez. How do you see the White Sox opening up the season? Which 2 guys are going to be manning the catcher position and when we have the lid lifter here on March 27th?
I hope to God it's not Omar Narvaez, because I can't watch catcher be an automatic out. I just can't do it anymore. Corey Lee, yes, he obviously tailed off, but I still think Corey Lee fits perfectly to what you want to have in a backup catcher for the next decade. Very cheap. Obviously, it gives you those Ron Karkovice vibes of being able to get guys out, catch guys stealing. And Matt Thice, you need someone then obviously who can hit left-handed. I mean, he's not ideal, obviously, but they will have no left-handed if they go with Drury and Taylor off the bench, and what I think I had Sosa then coming off the bench too. It would be so you need a left-handed guy. So I think that would be it. And also, again, you're going to get professional baseball from those 2. Like Thice was a career 200, 210. I mean, nothing great, but he'll at least I think he's a better framer than he is a pop guy. Where Lee is the pop time guy, and a terrible framer. Yeah, but although again, please give me the automated strike zone. Framing should not be a thing. It should not.
Umpire fooling shouldn't be a thing.
No, I hate that. That is the hill I'm going to die on. That is the one thing I'll be traditional on. It should not be a thing. I don't mind, blocking balls, making sure there's no pass balls, because I've been watching a lot of college baseball lately to make sure I'm well versed in the draft. And my God, there is so many freaking wild pitches. Good Lord. Anyways, I don't mind that stuff, but framing should not be a thing. Like, I'm sorry. Certain guys have careers because, he can frame. Well, he can't hit. He can't block the ball. He can't do, he can't do any of that. We're talking about our old friend Yasmani Grandal. Yasmani Grandal still has a career because he can block the ball. He's the worst person in your clubhouse, and he barely can hit.
Easily.
He was so bad in the 2018. He was so bad in the 2018 playoffs that they didn't even trust him to be the catcher anymore. They didn't trust him.
I know.
And then he went to the team that they beat because they're like, hey, let's bring him in. And they're like, oh, my God, this guy's a bag. Let's get him up out of here. Like, you want guys that at least can field the position defensively. And, yes, he gets on base freaking Yasmani Grandal, but then you had to have 3 hits to move him around. At least Corey Lee, he can run a little bit.
He moves a little bit.
He moves.
So we're gonna start with a couple veterans. At what point do you think the White Sox pull the trigger on either one of the young guys, and who comes here first? Who gets to Chicago first? Todd?
Well, I think what makes sense is you send Teal and Caro down just because, you can have them either split time at catcher, and then whoever's not catching that day, you either have them be DH, because if you're going to bring both of them up at the same time and have that, just rotate them. One guy's the DH, one guy's the catcher. Also, with Teal's athletic profile, you might want to at least have him learn how to play first and, get familiar again playing in the outfield in college that they've done that. So I think you want to give them at least maybe 2-month run down there and then bring them up. And especially, I think Carroll was terrible in April and May, I think, down in the minors, and then he just raked in June. So you want to get these guys a little bit more acclimated on that, get them some more that, and now that maybe Walker McKibben can give them some notes, some things to work on when it comes to framing, because he is such a catching guru. So you have him work on those types of things, give him a few months, and then bring him up. I would say in June, because especially they need to sell tickets.
Both of them at the same time, though. You'd promote them together. You'd say, "All right, boys, you coming north," or who's going first?
That's a good question, because you can. And the other reason why I would pick Theis, I mean, you could pick Narvaez too, because either way, you're going to DFA one of those guys. Or
right, someone's going away. Exactly.
Or again, you could technically. I mean, everybody always needs a backup catcher. I mean, I think Ethan Kratz once got traded like how many times in his career?
Oh yeah, sometimes these guys you can't move them because the backup catcher is so volatile, for sure.
Yeah, so you'll open up a spot there, and then so then I think what you have to do is you probably bring up. I'm going to say Caro, because I think Caro's going to have the better raking, and you bring him up to catch. And then what I do think is God, I hope Andrew Vaughn has got some value. You bring him up. You bring up Teal probably around the trade deadline. I know it's a little bit longer. I know Ian Eskridge is probably going to bang his head against the wall when you're saying that. So I see him in the comments. But you bring him up, and he maybe, like you said, you have him play first or right field after you've moved Tauchman or Slater. Or again, if Tauchman and Slater are not very good and you need to DFA one of them, then yes, you move that. You move Teal into right field.
Okay. Got it. All right, last question. I've been asking every single one of my guests on this show, this one. How many wins would make this White Sox season fun for you, Todd?
Oh, God. Honestly, I would take anything over for as long as I never have to speak about the 1916 Philadelphia A's or be well-versed in the 1899 Cleveland Spiders, because there was a guy that would come into the comments and be like, well, no, the Cleveland Spiders are technically the worst team of all time. And you had to be like, dude, they won 20 games because the guy owned 2 teams and he put his best players on his other team, and he had the Cleveland Spiders just sitting around, and I don't know why. Right. As long as I never have to deal with that, I will take anything over 41 wins. I just never want to have to deal with that ever again. And also, there is a silver lining to this year if they lost, like, say, if they only won, like, say, 45 games, because they'll be eligible to have the number 1 pick. They'll be in the lottery.
That's true. They're not blocked. They will not be forced out of the top 10. So that is a silver lining.
Yeah, like that was the worst thing. The White Sox lost 121 games, and they're not going to be able to get, Justin Verlander, for example. Now, they should be still able to get a good player at number 10. Anybody could, but the Tigers, for example, lost 119 games. They got the number 2 pick because it used to be that alternating that. Yeah. They get Justin Verlander, and the rest is history. You know that. The White Sox, it's a little bit harder to find Justin Verlander at the number 10 pick. I'm just saying.
Absolutely. Todd, thanks for providing your insights on program at 5 days a week Sox Show. White Sox position player battles and how many wins will make this season a fun one. Remember, we ain't trying to be right on the show. We're just trying to understand. Anything you want to plug before you go?
No, I'm good. If anybody wants to write for Southside Showdown, we can always use contributors, apply, that type of stuff.
Thanks, Todd. Take care. Good talking to you, brother.
All right.
That was Todd Welter. That was a lot of fun. Next week's guest, I'm going to have Jordan Lazowski come on here from Sox on 35th, and we're going to build the White Sox starting rotation. That's right. We're going to go 1 through 5 and build the White Sox starting rotation from what we think right now. We won't have hardly any spring training results. The only thing we really know is that Kai Bush had Tommy John surgery, and we're going to try to build it. We're going to see how close we end up getting. So that should be a lot of fun in that format. Just want to say thanks to all the people in the comments, YouTube, 108 family, Punky's Pizza, of course. Appreciate you all smashing the like button, comments, all that shit. See you on Thursday, 108 Podcast. Bye-bye, and I love all of you.